I just saw Knives Out and this is my review. Now, for those of you who may not know, Knives Out is a new murder mystery whodunit that was written and directed by Rian Johnson and stars Chris Evans, Daniel Craig, Ana de Armas, Christopher Plummer, and many, many others in a stellar ensemble cast. The overview of the movie, there is a crime novelist who's the kind of main patriarch of this family that we focus on, and he's killed on the night of his 85th birthday. From there, a detective, private investigator, Benoit Blanc, is hired to investigate his death. He has to kind of go through a bunch of lies that the family tells in order to find the real cause of Harlan's death. First and foremost, I really enjoyed this movie. I think it works fantastic in a number of different aspects. Some of the main things that I liked, one of which is the writing. Rian Johnson has crafted an incredible script. Dialogue, it's witty, clever, everyone has things that are fast to say, and all of the writing is just sharp as a knife. That was dumb. I'm not gonna do that again. My bad. The script, it holds the tension necessary to keep the movie's pace fast, to keep you invested in the mystery, but it also puts in a good amount of humor. I think this humor isn't forced, it's very fun. It works well within the story and with what we know of the characters. Speaking of the characters, they're written in very fun and interesting ways. Each and every one of them is entertaining, whether their roles are big or small. They each have a very distinct personality. They are each different from each other, and the script plays each of these personalities off of each other in a way that is very well done, and I think it's phenomenal. Another thing that this movie did really well was just the job that each of the actors did. This movie has a lot of famous A-list actors in it, and they all do an incredible job in their respective characters. The quirks that were written for the characters, as I discussed earlier, are brought out even more by each of the cast members. And in terms of who really stood out to me in this movie, one of them was Ana de Armas. She was not very well known to me before this movie, and I wasn't really expecting her to have much to do. She was the grandfather's nurse in the movie. However, she, I would say, is probably the lead of this movie. What Ana de Armas brought to her role as a timid, shy, and just very caring nurse was very surprising to me, and it was thoroughly well done. And another one I want to talk about standout roles, is Chris Evans. He plays like the really bratty type grandson, very entitled. He's relied on his trust fund the trust fund that he gets for most of his life. And it was interesting to me to see Chris Evans play this role. We know him very much as Captain America, and so it was kind of fun to see him not only attempt to do a different type of role, but also to do it very, very well. And he is alongside Ana de Armas's character for a lot of the time in the movie, and they both play off each other very nicely. However, the biggest standout was Daniel Craig as the detective Benoit Blanc. He is probably the most, flamboyant character in this in terms of how he talks. He's very southern, very quirky. He makes a lot of the movie's humor. He doesn't necessarily tell jokes, but just his mannerisms and his actions are incredibly funny. I thought that the way Daniel Craig made use of his character, the character's speech style and vocabulary, was the most entertaining part of the movie. He kind of demands the screen in every single scene that he is, and the movie is so much better for it. And one of the things I also liked about his role is what we all want from a detective story or a murder mystery or a whodunit is to have all the clues kind of wrapped up at the end so we can finally see, what happened. And I think Daniel Craig also does a good job in being a character who can give us that. So I thought that was really good. The last thing that I really, really enjoyed in this movie is the simple fact that it just played out its mystery very, very well. Which you would kind of hope that'd be an obvious thing, but I've seen other murder mystery movies where it can be boring, very predictable at times. This movie kept you guessing throughout the whole thing, and it was also very unique among the genre, because about halfway through the movie, it kind of tells you a really big piece of information that you would think would be held to the end, and when I saw that, I was really shocked. I was like, well, do they really have anywhere to go after this? I mean, this feels like it should be the end. And they kept going, and they did it really well. It surprised me, but it didn't bore me. It entertained me. It still kept me guessing. Even though I knew a really big piece of information, it was still very intense, and the pace kept up. My expectations on it were subverted, and I really liked it in this case. In terms of things that I didn't really like about this movie, there's nothing I can say that was like objectively bad, like this person was a bad actor, or this part of the story was just not good within the rest of the sense of it. There was really only one thing that I didn't like, and that's just a personal preference. There was a certain decision that was made in terms of the murder and what happened, who did it, how it was done, that I was hoping for something different. And that's okay that they went a different direction. It was just not what I was hoping for, and so that disappointed me a little. So those are kind of my overall thoughts. I think it was extremely entertaining, and one of the things I also thought it was good about it, it gave you a lot to think about afterwards, which you don't really expect in these kinds of movies. You kind of just go to them, you see them, and then like, oh, you know everything. But as I was leaving the theater, I found myself continuing to think about like, oh man, it's really cool how this character did this, or how that tied into this. And I kept thinking about the plot and how cool it was that they would kind of tie all this stuff together. If I had to put some sort of rating on it or something like that, I would probably give it a 93% out of 100, and I would highly recommend it to anyone I talk to. So that's my review.